Hi, this is the elaboration lesson and it's part 1. So before we start talking about strategies to help you elaborate, you're going to need a few things. The first thing you need are the actual handouts to write on. They'll say elaboration lesson part 1 on the top. Pause till you get that. Today we're going to talk about strategies to help you with elaboration. Elaboration essentially means to say more about what you just said. So some of these are going to work well by themselves, some of them are going to need to be combined. But if you can't figure out what to say, this maybe will help you figure out what to say. I'm going to use the acronym CAGE, C-A-G-E, and we're going to talk about what to do. First step is we want to get organized. Before you write anything, you should have a plan. We're going to make sure we have a topic sentence that's focused. Maybe it's from our thesis, and it's just one of the reasons that we pull out from the thesis. And we're going to create a flea map of some sort, even if it's just for one paragraph. The second thing I want you to think about is the acronym CAGE. The C stands for clarification, and we'll run through what each one of these means. The A is an anecdote. The G deals with general examples. And the E is, you're going to talk about experiences. These could be personal experiences or the experiences of someone else. The third thing we're going to do is make sure we use transition words. Transition words ultimately just help show organization. So they help you move between different ideas and connect them all together so it doesn't seem really choppy. Later on you'll get a kind of giant list of these, but for now we're just going to use basic ones. So let's talk about clarification. Clarification really just means to say the same thing but in different words. If you're talking about something complicated, you want to make sure you clarify. So you're offering a restatement to make it clear what you mean. This is not to be used when something's really obvious. You don't need to clarify everything, but if you're saying something complicated, you could clarify it, make it clear, and it should not be repetitive. So don't say it and then say it again. Don't say it was fun. In other words, it was really fun, because that's not in other words, that's in the exact same words. So here's an example. If we had a topic sentence like Mother Teresa was generous. Mother Teresa was a really famous nun who lived in India and lived with the poorest people in the country. Clarification, we might say, in other words, she gave away more than most people ever would. We're kind of explaining what the word generous means in another way. So I want you to try it. All you're going to do is come up with a clarification statement for the topic sentence, school is too much work. Clarify this, and then pause and get it checked. So you might want to pause right now, and when you're done, show your teacher and get it checked. If you're rejoining us, that means you've gotten your clarification statements checked, so we're going to move on to anecdotes. Anecdotes are kind of fun. I like anecdotes. Essentially, an anecdote is just a brief story, which means it has a beginning, a middle, and an end, really short, maybe 2 or 3 sentence story. It should be used to make a point at the end of the story, which you might need to explain. So if you're just saying something's fun, and then you say a story about a time that was fun, you should probably clarify that, as you can see, blah 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 was fun. You want to kind of wrap it up and make your point. This is not meant to trail off into new points, so don't tell the story and then kind of get bogged down in the details and then you trail off. You want to always be organized, always have a plan, and it's meant to be focused. So you're using a story, a personal story, to enhance what you just said. So here's an example. Plants in the desert can be dangerous. If this was our topic sentence, then what we're trying to prove is dangerous. We could clarify it, but it's kind of obvious, so we might give an example. And here's an anecdotal example. One time when I was visiting my cousin in Arizona, we took a little drive out to a secluded area of the desert. Just for fun, I decided to get out of the car and take a photo beside a giant saguaro cactus, but I thought it would be funnier to pretend to hug it. Just as I did, my foot slipped on a pebble, and my arm was skewered by one of the cactus's giant spikes. Maybe hugging a cactus wasn't such a funny idea after all. True story, by the way. So this is just like a one-time win. It's just a little story example. So I want you to try it, and it may take a little bit of time. You're going to tell a brief story to support the topic sentence that we're given. So you're just trying to think of a story. School is too much work. Use transitions to start your story, and then get it checked. Sorry. So pause for a second. Try to think of 2 or 3 sentence story with a beginning, middle, and end that proves the point of school being too much work. Don't worry about if it's real. You're just gonna come up with a story to prove a point, then get it checked. So pause here until you're done. If you're joining us, we're talking about general examples. So the C was clarification, the A was anecdote, which is a story, the G is general examples, the E is experiences. A general example gives one specific instance of the idea you just mentioned. So you have to say something and then give an example of it for it to be an example. They can be from your own personal life or from any other source. So you can have personal examples or global examples, doesn't matter. Sorry, slight glitch. So the big deal is you want to make sure you use transition words to indicate an example. If you don't know what transitions you might use, this is kind of obvious, but you might say, for example, or for instance, or for one thing. You're just kind of indicating that the next thing you're going to say is an example about what you just said. So here's an example. Go back to our first topic sentence. Mother Teresa is generous. Before we clarified that, now we could just say maybe an example. For example, when she met a beggar on the street, she gave him the last coins that she had. Example. So this one's not too hard. It's easier than an anecdote. Let's try it. So for the same thing that you did before, let's try school is too much work as your topic sentence, and you're just going to give a general example. It could be personal or it could be about everybody. General example. Pause and get it checked, please. If you're rejoining us, the last thing we're going to talk about for elaboration are just experiences. An experience is kind of like a story and kind of like an example, except you're making it very clear that it was an experience, that someone actually had this experience. Someone has been through this situation. You can make it about yourself, or you can make it about someone else you've heard about. No big deal. You want to make sure you use transitions before any experience elaboration, just like an example. So you might say something like, one time I heard, or in the past I have done this, or there was once a story about, and so you're making it obvious that you're getting ready to tell a little experience. So here's an example. This is a pretty famous example. If our topic sentence was don't give up when you fail at first, maybe an example is, one time I heard a story about how Michael Jordan was cut from his high school basketball team. However, he did not give up after this failure and went on to become one of the best basketball players in the history of the game. So we have transitions like one time and however. It's a brief little story. It's not an anecdote because it's not a beginning, middle, end, but it's just someone's experience to prove your point. So let's try it. We're just going to come up with an example experience. It could be yours, or it could be one you've heard about. Holidays can be very tiring. You could say exhausting, you could say tiring. We're going to come up with an experience to prove this. Use transitions, and once you've come up with your experience, pause and get it checked. You might want to pause right now and write a little bit and then get it checked. If you're rejoining us, this is kind of the end of your notes, but these are super important to keep because you have the definitions and you have the strategies and you have your own examples you came up with. So just a reminder, your first step when writing is to get organized. We want to make sure we have a focused topic sentence. You're only going to have one point or one reason or one opinion in your topic sentence. Everything in your paragraph has to relate back to that topic sentence. So your wrap-up sentences would kind of pull it back all together if you've gone on to an anecdote or something like that. The strategy today is we want to think cage. Clarification, anecdotes or stories, general examples, experiences, either of yours or someone else's. We want to go in whatever order works best. The acronym is to help you remember the types of elaboration. Honestly, I don't think that works best. I don't think it's best to have an anecdote first. My personal favorite is just to do a topic sentence and clarify it, give a general example, maybe talk about an experience, also give an anecdote from your own life, and then wrap it up. That right there will be a crazy great paragraph. That is elaboration like crazy, and the anecdotes would also help your style and your word choice and your tone, because you would be telling a story just like you would tell a story in normal life. So think about what pattern you might like to use. You're going to eventually write a really good paragraph with this, and just kind of talk to me about it. If you say, I don't know, then that's not the right answer. If you say, oh, I like the way you did it, I'll maybe do that too, okay. But have a justification for whichever order you would put these in. This is the end of part 1. Come talk to your teacher, and he or she will give you the supplies for part 2.